Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I decided to revisit an old video as the meta has changed, and honestly I wasn't too happy with the quality of the previous version. Today I'll be covering 1 hour of loot from Vorkath as an average player, but with a twist. I'll be trying out 2 different combat styles, using reasonably priced gear to see which might be better for you at your combat level and comfort with the style. Before we get into gear, we're going to need to cover requirements. Firstly, you'll need to have completed the Mammoth of a Quest Dragon Slayer 2. This has some steep requirements, but I won't be covering those here, as I'm not making a how-to, just to how much you can make. For combat stats, at a bare minimum, you'll need at least 75 hit points, 70 defense, and luckily the magic requirement is well exceeded by the quest, being that of 75 to even access the method. For the melee method, you will require at least 82 attack to wield the Fang, or 78 if you choose to use the Dragon Hunter Lance, and a bare minimum of 75 strength. I would personally recommend at least 85 strength to raise up that max hit a bit, as the more damage you can deal, the more kills you can get per hour. I also do not recommend trying melee if you can't wear at least a lance, as the next best weapon would probably be the Zamorakian Hasta, which is just not even close to as good performance-wise. For the ranged method, I recommend at least 75 ranged, both to use the blowpipe if you wanted to, and to have a reasonable accuracy regardless of the weapon used. For a suggested range level, I would say at least 85 range to help increase your accuracy, and max hit is a definite bonus, and you should strive for that. I'd also recommend having a fairly leveled player-owned house, or alternatively using the house party world to utilize a teleport to the Lunar Isle, as well as an ornate rejuvenation pool. Obviously, upgrading a POH is out of the question for many players, as to get an ornate pool requires at least 83 construction with boosts, costing around 16 to 40 million gold depending on the method used. So feel free to use that house party world. So for equipment, for my melee, I'm going to be utilizing the Osmunten's Fang, my Avernic Defender, which you can easily substitute for a Dragon Defender if you don't have the Avernic, as it is a bit expensive. A Fighter Torso, Obsidian Plate Legs, Serpentine Visage, a Salve EI, Dragon Boots, Barrow's Gloves, Fire Cape, and I'm using a Light Bearer, but you can also use a Berserker's Ring if you'd like, bringing the grand total just shy of 46 mil at the time of recording for this setup, according to the items kept on death. This means that it's fairly expensive to use melee, but over the long term, it's a bit better as much of the gear is needed for other activities. For the inventory, I'll be bringing along a Divine Super Combat, an Extended Super Anti-Fire, 4 Prayer Potions, a rune pouch containing Crumble Undead and House Teleport runes, and a Slayer Staff. Quick prayers for the style will be Magic, Piety, and if you're using standard Super Combat potions instead of Divine, use Preserve to help keep down those costs. As a special attack weapon, I'll be bringing my Ancient God Sword as I want to test it out here and see how well it performs, and I did purchase this at 45 million, so keep that in mind when you're talking about factoring in costs for the spec weapon. A good backup would be either a Bandos God Sword or a Dragon Warhammer depending on your budget, or alternatively, I believe a Crystal Halberd also works here for a very cheap special attack weapon. For the melee method, we're going to start our first kill of the trip off by sipping our Divine Super Combat Potion, healing is necessary if you want to, and sipping the Extended Super Anti-Fire, and then turning on Quick Prayers and turning off Run. Then poke Vorkath and get the slaying out. Throughout the kill, Vorkath will use a couple of different attacks, as well as some special attacks. I won't cover them here, but just know that control clicking can be very useful to avoid his ball attack. I also bring a Slayer Staff to auto-cast Crumble Undead with this setup, as with a higher tier melee armor, you can splash the Crumble Undead spell at a negative 68 magic bonus. During the acid phases, I also do a little Wooks Walk as well, since with melee, it's incredibly easy to get down. As far as kills per hour that can be expected with higher stats, even with our cheap gear, I managed to get just under 24 kills during my test hour. I did go over my last kill by 24 seconds due to bad timing, but I'll still count it. From our kills here today, we can see that 24 kills resulted in just under 2.5 million as shown by the Runelight loot tracker. The supply tracker is a little bit off as I was dropping all the leftover sharks to pick up loot, but the total cost of supplies, including the price of the sharks dropped, was right about 300,000 gold. And that leaves us with a nice profit of 2.2 million gold per hour using melee, which isn't bad considering most of the gear here is used in other activities as well. Now moving on to range, and the bar for this is a lot lower cost-wise, but is a little bit more in the way of requirements. While I do recommend trying to go for the Hard Western Provinces diary to obtain elite Void Knight armor, regular Void Knight armor works very well here. And speaking of diaries, I would also recommend the Hard Kandarin diary, to give you a higher chance of bolt special attacks happening. Failing that, a set of Karil's or Blessed Dragonhide of your choosing with a Serpentine Visage will also cut it here. Just be aware that you'll be missing out on a fair bit of damage compared to the Danger Paper Mache. The rest of the gear will consist of the Salve EI again, Imbued Archer's Ring or Lightbearer, Blessed Dragonhide boots, and Ava's device of your choice, ideally the Assembler, but previous versions work as well, and either a blowpipe loaded with amethyst darts or a dragon crossbow with some form of anti-fire protection, such as a dragon fire shield or an anti-fire shield. Please note that at a minimum, you're going to at least need the imbued salve to work for this method, as if it's not imbued, it will not work with ranged, as it's meant for melee only. The inventory will be mostly the same, with the differences being the use of diamond and ruby enchanted dragon bolts if you're using a crossbow, a divine or regular bastion potion, and needing a form of anti-venom if you're not using a serpentine visage. This time, I'll be bringing a dragon warhammer, as the ancient god sword special attack won't help me too much, since I won't be right next to Vorkath. And feel free to use a Bandos god sword if the dragon warhammer isn't in your budget. Once again, excluding the spec weapon, the range setup's total cost is right around 6.4 million gold according to the items kept on Death Tab at the time of recording. So with using the fairly decent gear with a dragon crossbow and elite void, most of the range kills are pretty relaxed. I've definitely done more kills using melee, so I'm a lot more comfortable with that style compared to this. But I know a lot of people prefer to use ranged, so I wanted to make sure I included that for this as well. With that being said, the method is pretty similar to kill Vorkath, and I did not Wooks walk this, as I personally think with range that's a little bit harder of a skill to get down. And I did die on the first kill of the trip, which does add 100k to the cost of supplies, and overall I have to say for me, I do not enjoy the ranged method. It might be a little bit more relaxed, but it's just there's more to it, and I don't enjoy it. I'd also brought the Dragon Warhammer for the first few kills, but ended up leaving it in the bank because I wasn't able to get a single special attack off in the 6 kills that I brought it with me, and would rather have the extra piece of food. So using the ranged method, we can see that I managed to pull exactly 17 kills during the hour, and with a supply cost of 545k including the death, we can already see that ranged is a lot less profitable. Even if we exclude the death, that's still under $500,000 of your profit eaten in just supplies. Now, I did make about 1.6 mil in those 17 kills, of which I did have to take the profit of 1 kill out due to not having picked up the loot prior to dying. And now for the part that I'm sure everybody's interested in, at least that I am, which is a comparison between the two methods. While melee does have more of an initial gold cost for the setups that I used, over time the profit will exceed that of doing ranged only. As in this test, I made 2.2 million in profit using melee compared to just under 1.1 million in profit using ranged, which does add up over hundreds of kills here. The nice part about doing Vorkath, at least compared to other bosses, is the low barrier to entry, since you can get started using under 10 million gold worth of gear if you're using ranged, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. What I would recommend is trying to learn how to do melee, as you can get a lot more kills per hour here and keep more of your profit doing so. Now, if I had a Dragon Hunter crossbow instead of the Dragon crossbow, I may have made more profit here, as I know from past experiences the Dragon Hunter crossbow is extremely good at Vorkath. The downside though is that the Dragon Hunter crossbow is hovering right about 60 million gold at the time of recording this, compared to the only 33 million cost of the lance currently, or 35 million for the Fang, which is used at a lot of activities outside of this. And that's going to be the end of this week's episode, and I'll be back with more. For those curious, I have been wanting to get back into making videos, as I think it's really fun to do, especially considering how much I enjoy the game and the community. It's just, life has happened, but I'm getting back into it slowly. I'm considering doing an hour of Adorvis or an hour of Zulrah for my next 1 hour kind of video to see how much an average player can make. So be sure to let me know which one you want to see next, and as always, take care and thank you for watching.